Hello everyone! Welcome to the second video in the series in which I trace how the VTM clans developed and changed throughout the editions of the game, identify the main themes of each clan, and present my thoughts on how to incorporate these themes into creations of VTM characters. Today, we are talking about Clan Toreador. I will again go through all the editions of VTM and see how the clan changed between them, sticking to the books that were the most relevant for expressing the clan in each edition. I'm not covering bloodlines, as they usually don't share the themes of the main clan they stemmed from. They're a different thing, and I'll get to them at some point. Unless, of course, like a Toreador, I got bored and abandoned this once exciting endeavor that now leaves me only cold and indifferent. It is a video about Clan Toreador, so it should go without saying that if I think parts of the books are bad, I will say it. How could I not point out the poorly thought out ideas marring the game I enjoy so much? As far as I'm concerned, pretending that media we enjoy is all good and flawless isn't a sign of appreciation, but lack of reflection. And darling, uncritical adoration becomes tedious so quickly. Since it's a video about Clan Toreador, I will also be meaner here. You've been warned. This is a rather long video, so if you only want to listen to the summary of Toreador themes, you can skip straight to part 2. There will be links to different sections in the description. And with all that out of the way, now we can focus on what truly matters: Clan Toreador. Part 1: The Evolution of Clan Toreador. There are two main themes that stand out from the description of Clan Toreador in first edition of Vampire the Masquerade: search for beauty and pursuit of pleasure. The first is what gives meaning to Toreador's existence. The second is their downfall. Beauty and search thereof ultimately is more important and intrinsic characteristic of the clan. The Toreador are concerned with beauty in a way no mortal can fathom. Nothing matters to them more than beauty. Their senses are uniquely attuned to it, so much that Toreador can be captivated and immobilized by it. This sensitivity to beauty is a flaw ascribed to the clan in all editions of the game except V5. Beauty makes Toreador feel such wonder and delights them so much that in that moment everything else disappears. Toreador seek beauty which often, but not always, takes the form of art. They appreciate mortals for their artistic vision, keep up with their trends, and give immortality to those they consider the most worthwhile, protecting their artistic genius against death. They search for truth and meaning found in art. The text also states that they seek salvation in art, which, based on later books, likely refers to salvation from becoming a monster, from straying too far from their humanity. This also signals an almost spiritual attitude Toreador have towards art and beauty. They don't just love it because it pleases them aesthetically, they love it because it gives meaning, or semblance of meaning, to their lives. The Toreador experience intense feelings and sudden passions. They fall in love easily and use their enhanced senses to become more consumed by beauty or pleasure. The quote given to the clan in the core book is spoken by a Toreador who fell deeply in love with a mortal and was heartbroken when he found out that she was an imitator and not a real artist. He proclaims, "She was unworthy. I don't think I have ever recovered." A statement that can of course be read as an exaggeration by a flamboyant Toreador, but it also reveals a truth about how sudden and overwhelming Toreador's emotions can be. Their world is intense, and so are they. But in this intensity, they generally aren't loud or obnoxious like a Brujah might be. While they can be flamboyant, they are also elegant, regal, and sophisticated. Their pursuits aren't generally appreciated by others. While some appreciate their good taste, other kindred often see Toreador as idle, empty-headed, and rather useless. Search for pleasure is the second most pronounced aspect of Clan Toreador in first edition. Unlike search for beauty, it is not something worth pursuing, but something Toreador lose themselves in. While beauty gives meaning to Toreador's lives, pleasure removes meaning from it, leaving only desire for more pleasure to overwhelm the senses. Toreador who succumb to pursuit of pleasure become nothing more than hedonists, desperately chasing exciting sensations. The text states that Toreador are generally called hedonists, but that is a misrepresentation. It's not what the clan is about, but what some of its members become. It is a sad fate. Finally, in a quote about Toreador given to Clan Malkavian, there is a hint of something inside them that fuels both their search for beauty and readiness to succumb to pleasure. Some pain, emptiness, something stale and fruitless. It is not a life they live, but an everlasting death. The text of second edition is pretty much identical to the first one. The one noteworthy difference is that Toreador who succumb to search for pleasure are now called sensualists instead of hedonists, which gives a more direct representation of the kind of pleasure they seek. Now, we get to the first Clanbook Toreador. It fleshes out the clan and makes it feel more complete, through emphasizing ennui Toreadors succumb to, as well as their social skills. The Clanbook introduces three main archetypes of Toreador: artiste, poseur, and burnout, each expressing a different aspect of the clan. They are also labels, existing within the setting, but they're not a strict division, but mostly derogatory labels that Toreador throw at each other. Some embrace them, some use them as social weapons, some reject them altogether. Clanbook very rightly suggests that players' characters shouldn't know which labels they will end up having applied to them. There is looseness to these labels that makes me like them as a way of thinking about Toreador characters, although they obviously shouldn't be treated as an absolute classification nor as an unchangeable aspect of the character. Artistes, as the name suggests, are the Toreador who possess original artistic vision and that can create art that would be considered of value by their clan. They personify the aspects of the clan that is about creating beauty. They're the ones embraced for their artistic abilities, the ones who create breathtaking works, the ones who guide and teach mortal artists. Although I think the Clanbook overemphasizes the extent to which Toreador influenced the development of mortal art, making it sound a bit ridiculous. Toreador only marvel at the most exquisite works, but the perfection doesn't lie in technical execution, nor even simply in the aesthetic value. Toreador who have a great technical ability might not even be considered artists at all. Art and beauty come from an original vision, from the emotions conveyed through the work. Perfection that Toreador seek is first and foremost in the vision and meaning expressed by the creator. The Clanbook confirms that for Toreador, creating art can be a way to maintain their humanity, which makes sense given how for Toreador art is about expression, vision, and emotions. If one isn't able to create beauty, witnessing it can also be a way to feel more human. The Clanbook also emphasizes the importance of art and beauty through introducing two new skills for Toreador characters: creativity and art appreciation, that can be rolled respectively to come up with original creative concepts and to discern the artistic value of a particular creation. Poseurs are the Toreador archetype expressing the side of their clan that wasn't particularly emphasized in earlier books. Their social skills, charm, ability to subtly manipulate others, and to direct social situations according to their whims. While this ability was always implied by Toreador clan disciplines of presence and auspex, here it is emphasized as one of the most important aspects of the clan. Toreador are said to possess incredible talent at intrigue and subterfuge. They are masters of wit and language. They engage in complex, subtle social games and can ruin another kindred's reputation with nothing but words. Toreador are excellent at manipulating mood and opinions of others, because they are also excellent at gathering information about them. They use this information, but don't generally share or trade it. They actually prefer to be underestimated and viewed as nothing but idle degenerates. They also lean into image of hedonists to hide how much they know about other kindred. The Clanbook also attempts to give the clan more of an internal structure in the form of guilds, which, to be honest, feels a bit superfluous. While it might be easier for the storyteller to divide Toreador in a given city into such guilds and to manage their political and social moves through them, easier often isn't better. Guilds feel like something that can result in an ossified simplification of a social structure that really doesn't fit the fickle, quickly changing nature of the clan. The final archetype is a burnout, generally denoting older Toreador and those who already lost more of their humanity. It leans into the third main aspect of the clan emerging from the clanbook, ennui. Some Toreador have seen so much that hardly anything impresses them anymore. They may still have artistic vision and still long for beauty and life, but they find it so much harder to be impressed and moved. They can grasp at life, but feel empty inside. This aspect of the clan is reflected in a new merit introduced in the clan book, very aptly called blasé. It makes the Toreador immune to effects of presence because they're that hard to impress at this point. Which expresses very well just how hard to impress Toreador can become, although I think complete immunity to presence is too much. Personally, I would dial it down to being just more resistant to it. Burnout archetype is also where Toreador hedonism resurfaces, as they are said to pursue base pleasure. They exploit and abuse mortals for that purpose, even those they used to love, as they become cold hearted and no longer care. In addition to presenting the three archetypes, the clan book re-emphasizes how central beauty is to the Toreador. It states that most are embraced for one of three reasons. They were beautiful, they had a talent to create things of beauty, or they could appreciate beauty more than an average person. It also adds that Toreador don't see rapture they experience when faced with beauty as a bad thing, and might seek it for pleasure, and that they like to travel to see beautiful places in the world. Although that last idea is accompanied by a rather silly notion that Sabbat Toreador allow their Camarilla clanmates to visit cultural centers in Sabbat cities. I think this tries to introduce complexity into Sabbat Camarilla enmity, but seriously? Sabbat sanctioned trips to cultural centers are perhaps the most boring way imaginable to go about relations across sect lines. Finally, the clan book emphasizes Toreador's closeness to mortals. Of all the clans, they find it easiest to navigate the world. They live among mortals, keep up with their trends, and easily fall in love with them. Love, for mortal or kindred, can help Toreador keep or rediscover their humanity. It is, perhaps, the possibility of love that makes Toreador so special. But relationships with mortals are likely to be disastrous. Humans are still prey to the Toreador, and Toreador are fickle creatures susceptible to ennui. At best, mortals might be left heartbroken and desperate as a Toreador grows bored of them. At worst, they might be killed by a Toreador who gets lost in their hunger for pleasure and vita. The Toreador of Vampire the Dark Ages continue to be characterized first and foremost by their dedication to beauty. They are devoted to it and like to immerse themselves in it, surrounding themselves with art and fine crafts. They embrace very beautiful people to preserve them for eternity and consider themselves the preservers and guardians of the exquisite, the bearers of the flame of inspiration. Inspiration and spiritual quality continue to be an important part of what the Toreador consider beautiful. They particularly enjoy artworks that aren't merely aesthetically pleasing, but also inspire. Entranced by beauty, they experience a state akin to religious rapture. They search for meaning and truth in the beautiful, and see it as a path to salvation, which can be interpreted both as keeping one's humanity and as being saved from damnation in a Christian sense. The eventual salvation of a soul lies in the secret of creative genius. You have to but look for it. Indeed, Toreador in Dark Ages are close to the Church, admiring the art it inspires and sometimes choosing to live in contemplation in monasteries. However, while they seek temperance, they are still prone to hedonism and excess. Toreador seek pleasure and succumb to vices in his pursuit. They are an impulsive, fickle clan, seen by others as weak, spineless, and focused on pointless things. If they are valued for their artistic accomplishments and search for understanding and enlightenment. Interestingly, Vampire the Dark Ages moves away from social aspect of Toreador. They are said to actually disdain kindred politics and are a much more contemplative clan, focused on individual pursuits and vision. The revised edition core book reiterates a lot of what was introduced previously, but makes some subtle additions. One such addition is emphasis on passionate nature of Toreador. They are likely to embrace out of passion. Passion is their driving force, dictating their actions and choices. Whatever a Toreador does, she does with passion. Whatever a Toreador is, she is with passion. The Toreador are dedicated to the Camarilla, but they find everyday running of it tedious and prefer to leave it to equally boring functionaries. Instead, they aim to captivate and inspire, and to exert influence on others in this way. Revised Edition also expands on the tragedy and pain of Clan Toreador. Just like in previous editions, they are prone to succumbing to ennui and hedonism. But an important addition is that, despite their passion and desire for art, they eventually lose their ability to create it. This is well summed up in a quote about Toreador, given to the boring functionaries of Clan Ventro. Truly, their great passion must be a curse, for kindred lack the ability to create what they may only impotently observe. The revised edition, of course, produced the second Clanbook Toreador. Like many clan books, it is a mixed bag. It opens with some poor quality fiction interwoven with an account of history of Clan Toreador, and it somehow manages to be both silly and tedious at once. But on a more serious note, the Clanbook goes into always questionable territory of having kindred behind real life atrocities and bigotry. For example, behind exiling Jewish people from Spain in the Middle Ages, or behind restricting Chinese immigration to the US. It also touches on many uncomfortable aspects of US history, such as conquest by Europeans, slavery, and gender inequality. And now, it feels like writers probably wanted to draw attention to these issues by including them, I hope, but at the same time, addressing something like slavery through describing different views that the vampire clan had on it is insensitive, to put it very mildly. Overall, the inclusion of these issues feels like a box ticking exercise. There's no real depth to how they're presented, no gravitas that they deserve. Nothing of substance is being said through this, and it is seriously pretty bad. But when the clown book doesn't attempt to poorly talk about real world history and focuses on vampires, it actually has some nice ideas for playing VTM. The most important one is that Toreador eventually lose their ability to create the works that they would consider art. That is the great tragedy of the clan, one of its core defining aspects in this edition, and I think a pretty brilliant addition to what Toreador are and are about. While they were always said to be prone to ennui and empty hedonism, Revised Edition explores why that is. The emptiness and pain that were always said to define Toreador existence are given a more fleshed out explanation and tragic depth. Already on the back cover of the clan book we read, more than any other kindred, they feel the domination of the embrace, as it extinguishes the flame of creativity for which they long. The idea is reiterated throughout the pages. The Toreador can learn new styles and art forms, but there is something lifeless and repetitive about their creations. While their work can be technical masterpieces, artistically, they're worthless. This doesn't happen for the embrace itself. The narrator states that he did his best works as a neonate. But eventually, the Toreador are left empty, bored, and desperate to recapture the spark that once inspired them. The true horror facing the Toreador is boredom, a state where little inspires and little moves them. This affects not just their ability to create, but their very emotions. What once caused their passions to stir doesn't make them feel anything at all. What once terrified them no longer does. Eventually, even the horror of killing no longer elicits strong feelings. Suffering of others and murder become banal. One succumbs to one's deadliest nature, not out of weakness, but simply because it no longer matters. While it isn't stated outright, the implication is that Toreadors start feeling empty inside as they lose humanity. At the same time, the things that rekindle their lust for life and inspire them are also the things that help them stay human. It can be love, for mortals or for kindred. It can be sex and intimacy, which briefly makes them feel more alive. Beauty works the best of all. This importance of beauty to the Toreador is underlined by a legend, which states that their clan curse is not a curse at all, and that the Toreador have in fact been blessed by Cain to never lose human sense for beauty. The clan book also expands on the social aspect of Clan Toreador and their place within the kindred society. It reiterates that Toreador are extremely skilled at navigating and steering social situations. Their elders get a sixth dot auspex power that lets them know what any given person wants to hear. Toreador are, however, often perceived as ineffective. While that perception might appear to be in contradiction with their social skills, it is in fact, of course, its product. Toreador generally prefer to be underestimated and cultivate the image that has them perceived as useless, mostly interested in sitting pretty at parties and in their petty rivalries. The Toreador are very skilled at gaining power and influence, but they wield their power subtly. They prefer to steer and influence than to hold powerful positions themselves. They generally act through others. They prefer to influence princes than to be princes themselves. Subtly, unobviously, they pursue their goals and are much more dangerous and influential than many realize. Some kindred look down their noses at the Toreador, dismissing them as effete fops or self absorbed buffoons. Quite simply, those kindred are fools. Dark Ages Vampire is the revised edition's take on kindred in the Middle Ages. Its write-up of Toreador presents yet another spin on interpreting their clan curse, while re-emphasizing that deep appreciation of beauty helps Toreador remain human. Here, the curse is presented as a punishment dealt to Toreador antediluvian by the angered Cain for producing an exquisite and evocative artwork, revealing the truth that kindred could retain human soul. Punishment was to be distracted by beauty, but Toreador learned to use it to continue to understand what it means to be human through appreciation of beauty. Rapture they experience reawakens their atrophied emotions, reminds them of the pleasures of life, and helps them stay human. But the pursuit of pleasure can also be destructive to the Toreador. Some can lose themselves in it, forgetting everything else. The Toreador of Dark Ages vampire are not the spiritual, contemplative kindred of Vampire Dark Ages. They are much more in line with how the clan is said to be in the modern day. They engage in social games, and their meetings resemble social and intellectual battlefields. They manipulate people, play with them, and as they become more bored and more inhuman, their games become more cruel. Beauty brings them closer to human emotions, but as they age, they find beauty in more and more extreme, disturbing, and cruel things. The 20th anniversary edition of VTM was created as a celebration of the 2 decades of the game. Its write-up of Clan Toreador brings together earlier elements with some subtle changes in emphasis. Toreadors stay close to mortal world, follow its trends, act as muses and patrons to its artists. They are fickle, quickly lose interest and move on to the next great thing. They succumb to ennui. They are socially skilled and good at gaining influence, but seen by others as useless, arrogant, and lovely, but weak. A subtle change from revised edition is that now many Toreador are said to become princes, indicating that they are more likely to go directly for positions of power. They are, however, still very likely to exert influence through others, acting as consorts to those formally holding power. V20, much like core books of the first and second edition, again puts more emphasis on Toreador's pursuit of pleasure. Jaded, bitter, and desperate to feel anything at all, they become addicted to it, losing self control in pursuit of more and more extreme sensations. This pursuit, fueled by the emptiness they feel inside, is the tragedy of the clan. Desperate to feel something, they grasp at sensations and pleasure, routinely harming others along the way, and becoming more and more detached from who they once were. This is summed up in a quote given to Clan Malkavian, who described Toreador as made up of the pieces of the people they've harmed. Instead of separate clan books, V20 produced one book called Lore of the Clans. While not completely immune to purely thought out ideas that plague VTM books, its write up of Clan Toreador adds some good points to the concept of the clan. One thing I really like about it is that it calls bullshit on the idea that Toreador embraced some of the most famous human artists, which was common in previous editions. Lore of the Clans emphasizes that nobody would risk such an exposure, and states that instead Toreador embraced talented apprentices and people who didn't get famous yet. It's ultimately not a huge thing, but I think it works much better with how kindred are generally set to function. It is also better for chronicles. Let's be honest. While it may be possible, somehow, to pull off having a famous artist like Michelangelo, Van Gogh, or Frida Kahlo as a vampire in your story, most likely it will just be awkward and distracting. In vast majority of cases, it also is just going to be a gimmick that doesn't really add anything of value to the story. So I think Lore of the Clans is very right in discouraging it. Apart from that change, Lore of the Clans doesn't deviate much from the Toreador we know from previous texts. Beauty is at the core of what they are about, and they are tied to art because art is beauty. Their parties are social battlegrounds, used for shaping social landscapes. They want to be underestimated, but are in fact highly skilled manipulators. They put on elaborate social facades. They maintain contact with mortal world and often engage in relationships with mortals. Lore of the Clans very nicely adds here that for Toreador, mortals are a romanticized idea. Toreador are drawn to mortals for their humanity, beauty, and ability to create, but they can't sustain relationships with them. Such relationships inevitably lead to pain and tragedy. On a different note, Lore of the Clans also brings back the idea of Camarilla, Toreador having relations across the sect lines with Sabbat anti-Tribu, and also manages to fuck it up. This time, Sabbat is welcome at Camarilla Toreador's events, which is just too officially sanctioned to be even remotely interesting. Relationships across sect lines are just more interesting for the story if they're risky and need to stay secret. Of course, I think some Camarilla Toreador would be into the anti-tribu and pursue relationships with them. But please, make it dangerous and exciting. V20's version of the Dark Ages again presents Toreador that are akin to the modern image of the clan. They are aptly described as hedonists, but with a twist that they can never feel what they seek. They seek beauty and love art, but they no longer have the creative spark. They seek life, chasing after its memory, but their bodies are cold and undead. Some lose themselves in these pursuits. They get addicted to the rush of pleasure. They live by their whims and add zest to their lives through playing with the lives of mortals. Like the original Dark Ages, V20 mentions Toreador ties to religion, but it gives it a less contemplative and more passionate and desperate spin. Toreador are tortured by what they are and are desperately looking for redemption. They are passionate and intense about religion, taking it to extremes, such as self flagellation and self inflicting stigmata. Yet, their ardor doesn't stop them from following their sinful urges, pursuing pleasure and vita. The religious Toreador are forever intensely torn between their faith and sin. Fifth edition is the newest edition of VTM. It introduces quite a lot of changes to the game's setting and its elements, such as sects and clans. Some minor, some quite profound. In case of Clan Toreador, the changes are of a medium level. While in some ways the clan in V5 appears fairly similar to what came before, certain elements of the write-up bring more profound transformation of how it is conceptualized. Toreador are still passionate and socially skilled, drawn to beauty and art. They embrace on a whim, indulge in beauty, and strive to create themselves. They may be dismissed as shallow and nothing but perverts, but are in fact dangerous and skilled manipulators. They use their beauty and seduction to make others do their bidding. Gifted with both presence and aspects, they use them to manipulate the emotions of others. They bind Camarilla together through their social abilities. They skillfully use social gatherings to accomplish their goals. A Toreador-specific lore sheet even includes an ability for increasing one's influence through hosting a party. The differences start with the clan Bane, which for the first time is changed. Toreador now desire beauty so intensely that they suffer in its absence, receiving a penalty to their roles in less than beautiful surroundings. What is beautiful depends on individual Toreador's aesthetics, but the very concept for this bane suggests that in V5, beauty is seen as something potentially pretty common. It loses the spiritual quality that it had to Toreador in previous editions. It's no longer the special thing that helps Toreador stay human. Now, beauty is the baseline surrounding within which Toreador exist. They don't feel more alive in its presence, but feel worse in its absence. A version of the old Toreador clan flaw in V5 becomes Toreador clan compulsion. It is, however, a less punishing version. It gives a penalty to roles instead of completely entrancing the Toreador. It is also different in how it functions and what it implies about the clan. Previously, Toreador experienced rapture when faced with something of extraordinary beauty. Their clan flaw emphasized how sensitive they were to beauty and how deeply and meaningfully it affected them. The V5 clan compulsion doesn't activate in response to beauty as such. It is activated due to hunger that kindred can't escape, and the hunger causes Toreador to become obsessed with something beautiful in their surrounding. Which again implies that beauty is quite common, and that when Toreador's beast takes control, it is desperate to find beauty, and will find it pretty much anywhere. Making beauty more common and less spiritually meaningful to Toreador is tied to what I think is the most profound change V5 makes to the clan: the absence of ennui and burnout. The inner emptiness that used to drive Toreador to seek beauty that helped them stay human, and stimulation that helped them feel alive again, is now gone. They now seek pleasure because they are cursed with unbridled sensuality, and seek beauty because they can't properly function in its absence. Their creativity, passion, and love are no longer threatened by growing ennui. The core tragedy, one of the core themes of the clan, is just gone. It isn't replaced with anything substantial either. And unfortunately, without it, the clan feels somewhat one-dimensional and flat. Suffering and ennui remain absent from the Toreador write-up in V5 Camarilla book. But the book expands on Toreador connection to mortals. Like in previous editions, we read that they keep in touch with mortal trends and navigate mortal society with ease, using their connections and influence for the Camarilla. They want to enjoy mortal world and take mortals as lovers, but they eventually get bored and move on, leaving mortals heartbroken. The Camarilla book also portrays Toreador as rather snobbish, looking down at those they see as less cultured. This is, of course, nothing new. Toreador always had an arrogant, snobbish streak. But here it is underlined more than in previous editions, going so far as to say that Toreador elders resent art being made more available to the masses through low-cost museums and the internet. Which certainly seems like someone tried a bit too hard to say elders bad snobs. The book also emphasizes sensuality of Toreador and their search for physical pleasure and excitement. And speaking of sex, I can't not mention that Camarilla book has a Toreador character, Victoria Ash, describe what it's like to romance and have sex with different clans. Make of that what you will. It is presumably trying to be clever and fun, but as far as I'm concerned, it's very. I'm 13 and I'm going to write about sex because it's so mature and edgy. And I really don't want to be excessively mean, but there is also a really bad poem in the clan write up. And in any other video, I honestly would have just ignored it. But we are talking about Clan Toreador, and to the Toreador, bad poetry is offensive. Now, I get the temptation to include some art when writing about Toreador. I really do. But I'm sorry, throwing few pretentious lines together and calling it a poem just won't cut it. Toreador are about truly exquisite art, and there's wisdom in realizing you won't be able to write something that good. I certainly couldn't. It's better to leave the sublime nature of this art to the reader's imagination than to ruin the impression of the clan with something that can only be very generously described as subpar. Toreador also got a shorter write-up in the V5 Anarch book, which further emphasizes that while Anarch Toreador represent creative freedom, Camarilla is a structure and prison and doesn't engage in any challenging art. It's a very obvious and unimaginative take, and to be honest, I don't care for it. Part 2. What are the Toreador about? As I said in my previous video, I never found clan stereotypes, or specifically going against them, to be particularly conducive to creating interesting characters. I find it more helpful to look at clan themes, which aren't quite spelled out in the books, but can of course be deduced from the text. When I say themes, I mean simply what the clan is about, its core conflicts and drama, the questions it poses, and its place within the work of fiction that is VTM. Each clan is about something, and I found that engaging with some of what it is about is the best way to come up with compelling characters who will give you particular clan experience and won't just be a random character who is a Toreador only for their disciplines and a label. Of course, engaging with clan themes doesn't mean creating only obvious Toreador, although there is nothing wrong with a classic and iconic concept. The themes can also be expressed through unobvious characters, those who don't seem to fit the clan at first, and those who want to reject everything it is and stands for. In fact, the best unobvious characters I have seen were always those who, despite not seeming to fit the clan, still very much spoke to what the clan was about. The themes also have an in-setting significance. Of course, various kindred embrace various people for a variety of reasons. But it makes sense that sires are drawn to children they can relate to and look for those they deem useful for whatever activities they are engaged in. As a result, certain similarity within a clan is to be expected. There is, of course, space for diversity and outliers, but even the most unlikely outliers will have to contend with what comes with their vita and with social expectations stemming from what clan they belong to. Engaging with themes doesn't have to come through who the character was before the embrace. It can also be done through how they deal with the realities of existing as a kindred of their clan. So, What are the themes of Clan Toreador? Beauty. Beauty is the central theme of Clan Toreador. Many are embraced for it or for their ability to create it. Many seek it and care about it more than they care about anything else. All are unusually susceptible to it, and all can lose themselves in a trance like state when they witness it. To Toreador, beauty isn't simply the quality of being aesthetically pleasing. Most aesthetically pleasing things probably wouldn't cut it as beautiful to a Toreador. Beauty is something more, something sublime and captivating. It stirs emotions, sparks new thoughts, reaches to the very core of person's being. Toreador aren't just about enjoying pretty things. They are about longing for something so wonderful that it stops you in your tracks and impacts you forever. Toreador exist among kindred who, focused on their practical goals, don't understand their pursuits. They might ridicule and dismiss them as useless and a waste of time, much like art is often dismissed in the real world. As such, Clan Toreador is also about deeply loving something that doesn't have a practical use, simply for the meaning that it brings to your life, and about pursuing that love in a society that not only doesn't understand it, but also actively looks down on it. Some characters can lean into personal, even spiritual meaning of beauty, and the impact beauty and desire for it have on people. Beauty can be Toreador's passion, the one thing they truly adore. This can have a positive impact on them. Beauty can bring Toreador consolation and respite amidst the horror of kindred existence. It can even remind them of their humanity. But desire for beauty can also lead Toreador to dangerous and destructive actions. If beauty is the most important thing, the one thing that gives meaning to existence, and the one thing that makes you feel something, everything else, naturally, comes second. Some Toreador will do almost anything for beauty, because whatever the price is, it is worth paying. Love for beauty can bring out the best and the worst in a Toreador, and most importantly, these don't have to be mutually exclusive. A Toreador can use beauty as a remedy for their despair and become so desperate for it that they endanger and hurt others. A possessive Toreador, who is happy to hurt others, might also feel regret and sense of loss when faced with great beauty that reminds them of their humanity. Another aspect of beauty that can be explored for Clan Toreador is its social power. The clan focuses on the uncomfortable truth that no matter how much we want looks not to matter in the society, they matter. Beauty is power that can be wielded to influence people and to accomplish one's goals. Many Toreador characters will wield it. Some would have been skilled in it already in their mortal lives. Others will learn. Of course, some might despise such approach, but if they are beautiful, using their beauty will sometimes be the only thing they can do to get what they want, to help others, or to survive. Sometimes, the fact that they are beautiful will open certain doors to Toreador characters and gain them favor, and perhaps even a degree of protection from other kindred. But Toreador aren't just about using the power of beauty. They are also about being susceptible to it. Toreador characters will have it used against them. Clan Toreador is about having your judgment clouded by beauty, about being manipulated, deceived, and controlled through your desire for it. Of course, not every Toreador character will fall for every beautiful manipulator. although many, especially young ones, will. But every Toreador will sometimes lose themselves in rapture when faced with beauty. Other kindred, especially other Toreador, know this and will use beauty to make Toreador characters feel powerless, to ensnare them, or to sway them with the promise of the rapture they seek. Toreador characters who are beautiful are likely to be valued primarily or solely for their beauty, no matter what other qualities they possess. Their sires, clanmates, elders, even kindred of other clans will be interested in them for their looks. More powerful kindred will want to possess them and use them. Clan Toreador is about being objectified, about being a pretty toy or bargaining chip to others. It's about navigating, having a degree of power that comes with beauty, on one hand, and on the other, being manipulated, controlled, and used by those who desire you for it. Of course, not all Toreador will be beautiful, and not all will be people who valued beauty in their mortal lives. There is a place for outlier Toreadors, but such characters might face ridicule and dismissal from their clanmates, finding themselves isolated. And no matter whether they like it or not, all Toreador will be unusually susceptible to beauty. Some might feel embarrassed by the rapture they experience. Others might be afraid of a sudden overwhelming wonder at things that they didn't used to notice or think about. Some might even resent it. But all Toreador will have their existence impacted by beauty in some way. All will be moved when faced with something truly beautiful. Art. The second most prominent theme associated with Clan Toreador is, of course, art. It is closely entwined with the theme of beauty, and in some ways it is its extension. Clan Toreador is about valuing, pursuing, and admiring art in a society that doesn't hold it in particularly high esteem for its supposed lack of practical value. It is about meaning and transformative value of art, about how it can touch, inspire, and change a person, about seeking to find or create such art, and about caring about it as the most important thing that gives meaning to one's existence. Much like beauty, to a Toreador, art is something unique and not often encountered. To a Toreador, most drawings, paintings, poems, and other creative works aren't art. They may be good or very good, but it simply doesn't cut it. To a Toreador, good is basic, very good is banal. Both are too common to be worthy of consideration. They can be nice, but if they don't stun you into silence, if they don't shake the very foundations of your being, if they don't leave you trembling with wonder, gasping, unable to think about anything else, then they are not really art. Even technically perfectly executed pieces can easily be nothing more than excellent, but ultimately uninspiring craft. To a Toreador, art is about vision and meaning. It touches the very core of self, and it resonates in your soul forever. It makes you experience rapture. It's nothing less than sublime. Clan Toreador is about not being easily satisfied, about wanting and demanding more. It is about seeing the mediocrity of the world and not being afraid to call it out for what it is. But it is also about appreciating the things that are truly wonderful more than anyone else. Toreador may come across as haughty and pretentious. Many clearly are. But when they are impressed by something, their admiration and wonder will be deeper and truer than that of anyone else. They are the people who will see and understand the vision in the artist's work, perceive its subtle elements, dedicate time and effort to discerning its meaning, like it is the most important thing in the world, because to a Toreador it is. Toreador truly, deeply care about art and beauty. If you want to get that across in your character, let it influence their decisions and behavior. Of course, you don't want your Toreador character to never shut up about every beautiful thing they saw and constantly getting giddy with excitement for art. That would easily get cartoonish. But Toreador will often choose their desire for art and beauty over what might seem more practical or safer. They might later be angry with themselves for having done so, but that doesn't mean that they'll change their behavior next time. If someone is able to create art, Toreador will value them more than other people and will be more favorably predisposed towards them, or will be unhealthily jealous of them while still valuing them and their work. And if someone fancies themselves an artist, but is just all right or bad, Toreador will disdain them, finding them distasteful. This, of course, doesn't mean that they will be obnoxious about it. Some will, and will humiliate the person in question, sometimes in very cruel ways. Others will keep it to themselves, but the distaste they feel can still subtly influence their behavior. Of course, Toreador aren't just about admiring art. They are also about creating it. Many Toreador are embraced specifically for this ability. Given the importance of beauty and art to the Toreador, the characters who are artists will draw interest of their clanmates, for better or for worse. Their vision and skill might grant them a degree of support from influential Toreador, who will forgive missteps and protect them. But they will expect the artists to continue producing great work, and, like all Toreador, they won't be satisfied by anything less than extraordinary. Failure to live up to such hopes placed on the character by their sire or elders can quickly turn benevolence and protection into disappointment and contempt. Some characters will live up to the expectations, but some simply won't be good enough. Sires, after all, make mistakes. Those who turn out to be such mistakes will quickly become bitterly aware of just how deeply and thoroughly their clan can hurt those who slight them. And some Toreador will absolutely take not living up to their expectations as a personal offense. Characters who live up to the expectations but no longer wish to create might find themselves in similar disfavor, or encouraged to keep creating through use of presents and blood bonds, for as long as they are able to do it on the level that their clan considers worthy of the name art. Clan Toreador is about being an artist, trying to live up to extremely high standards and creating under immense pressure, and about the effects it has on people. The standards and pressure are not only external, but also internal. The clan is about asking yourself if what you create is truly art, about questioning own creativity and vision. It is about self doubt, never ending striving for more, and dissatisfaction with oneself. And finally, it is also about burnout, about seeing your creative vision slowly drain from you, about the pain of not being able to match your earlier self, about the fear of insignificance and mediocrity. That, of course, doesn't mean that creating as Toreador is only painful and stressful. Some Toreador will find great joy and solace in their art. They might gain genuine admiration and support for their talent. They might make genuine connections with others through art, both with those who want to support them and with those who also create. Creating art can be a respite, allowing a Toreador to, at least for some time, escape and forget the horror of kindred existence. But some Toreador will resent being valued for what they can do, but not for who they are. Some will struggle with the external and internal pressure and self doubt. Some will burn out and experience the pain of losing the ability that once brought them meaning, respite, and joy. Many, perhaps all, will eventually have to face the diminishing or the total loss of their artistic vision as they lose their creative spark and gradually succumb to ennui. Ennui. Ennui is a French word for boredom, adapted into the English language to mean weariness and dissatisfaction. It is the state of being unfulfilled and disappointed with the world, of acutely feeling the emptiness of existence, because nothing matters and nothing excites. Ennui, next to beauty and art, is one of the core themes of Clan Toreador. It is a counterpoint to the rapture they experience. It is why they value the things that still move them so deeply. It is what drains their creativity, causing them to appreciate creative vision more than anyone else. Toreador gets so intense because most of the time they feel nothing, and when something is wonderful enough to break them out of it, they grasp for it, desperate to have it. But nothing can compare to the intensity of rapture Toreador experience when faced with beauty. So most things eventually start to seem bleak and empty in comparison, leading to more ennui. Ennui isn't necessarily a theme that will directly affect player characters, especially if your chronicle is focused on neonates. Some young Toreador will already be starting to feel it, but many will still be free of ennui, still inspired, not yet disenchanted with the world. But ennui will affect older Toreador, and through them, indirectly, it will have impact on the younger ones. Some neonates will genuinely fall in love with someone who is too world weary to love them back, and many, if not most, Toreador neonates will be nothing more than a distraction from ennui for their sires and elders. They will be deeply valued, used and abused, manipulated through vita and presence, drained of all they can give, and eventually pushed aside when the older kindred grows bored of them. Some will be desperate to regain their attention and might go to extreme lengths to get it, hurting others and themselves in the process. Others will be angry at how they were treated and will seek to demonstrate it, or to have some form of revenge through equally dangerous and extreme actions. Some will react by feeling disillusioned and burnt out and will start to experience ennui themselves. Of course, ennui can affect kindred of any clan, but Clan Toreador, more than any other, leans into the theme of a world weary vampire who has lived for so long and experienced so much that hardly anything moves them. A vampire who nevertheless longs for something that will excite them, and when they find it, is willing to do or risk almost anything for it. The clan is about being tired of the world, feeling dead inside, and longing for something that will once again move you. It might be tempting to assume that characters who succumb to ennui will withdraw from the world and start disregarding everyday kindred affairs. And some might, but many won't. After all, it is possible to accomplish great things and hold immense sway while feeling dead inside. Many Toreador will go through the motions of social and political maneuvers, often very skillfully outwitting their opponents. They will attempt to fill the emptiness inside them with pleasure, intrigue, and power. They won't withdraw, but will readily throw themselves into the world, hoping to feel something again. Ennui fuels intense desires and desperate, unpredictable, reckless actions of the Toreador. It is what Toreador try to distract themselves from through art, romance, cruelty, and twisted, dangerous pleasures. Some may resist ennui for longer than others, but ultimately it is the fate of all Toreador, at least those who survive long enough to feel it. Chasing pleasure. Toreador are often described as hedonists. They chase the pleasurable experiences and sensations, often with hunger that defies reason. They don't just want to enjoy themselves, they want to immerse themselves in pleasure and excitement, be overwhelmed by sensations that make them forget everything else. And they often have things to forget: the horrors of the kindred existence, broken hearts, overwhelming ennui, all push the Toreador to seek sensations that will, even for just a moment, make pain, fears, and emptiness go away. Clan Toreador is about seeking to escape into pleasure. It is about what fuels such a desire and about the dangers of losing oneself in escapism, the impact this has on people, their relationships, and their actions. Toreador hedonism always has a hint of desperation. That desperation might be completely invisible to an outside observer. After all, Toreador are very skilled at hiding their true selves. It might even not be perceived by a Toreador themselves. Some characters will think they just want to enjoy themselves and will lie to themselves about how desperate they truly feel. But desperation is there, and for Toreador who start chasing pleasure, it is only likely to grow. Pleasure numbs Toreador's inner pain, and pleasure makes them feel something other than ennui. But ultimately, it can only be a temporary distraction. Eventually, Toreador grow bored of whatever pleasures they were seeking. It becomes just as disappointing and empty as everything else. They need fresh, often more extreme sensations. They abandon whatever or whoever they were enjoying at the time and chase after the next exciting thing. Creeping ennui and desperate desire for something that will make them feel alive again make Toreador fickle. They quickly chase after whatever excites them, and they grow bored of it just as quickly. Clan Toreador is about never being satisfied, about wanting more and always trying to fill the growing void inside you. They chase pleasure, but they can never attain it for long. They are not about living a pleasurable existence, but about desperately seeking a distraction from horror and emptiness. Mortal World. Toreador tends to remain close to the mortal world. They follow its trends and fashions more closely than many mortals. They look to humans for beauty and art that will move their undead hearts. They fall in love with mortals, or convince themselves that they did, trying to remind themselves of what love feels like. They immerse themselves in human world in order to feel alive again. As the ennui sets in, they long for the ardor they lost. They cling to mortals and their world to remind themselves of what they can no longer truly have. Being torn out of your life to never fully experience it again is, of course, one of the overall VTM themes, but Toreador are one of the clans that are most tied to it. They are the archetypical vampire longing to experience mortal life again. They are vampires falling for mortals who remind them of people that they lost or of what it's like to feel love. Clan Toreador is tied to the theme of alienation of kindred existence. Alienation that comes not from not being able to participate in mortal life as such, but from knowing that you are forever changed, and although you long for it, you can never truly be a part of it again. The clan is about seeing your humanity slipping away and feeling a sense of loss, not necessarily for the moral aspect of humanity, but for the inspiration and joy that come with it. Of course, some Toreador characters will also be concerned with the moral aspect. They might seek company of mortals to remind themselves of what is right and of what it's like to care about it. Others will cling to mortal life for the excitement and pleasure of it, for a memory of what they used to be, or for a respite from pressures and horrors of kindred existence. Chasing these memories and feelings can help the reader stay human. Some will actually fall in love, and that love will remind them of their humanity. But of course, there is also a darker side to Toreador closeness to mortals. Like most themes of the clan, this one intersects with the theme of ennui. Mortals are a distraction from it. Toreador long for their idea of the mortal life. They don't necessarily care for the safety and well-being of mortals. Some endanger and hurt them out of carelessness, as they desperately chase what they lost. Some might genuinely believe that a certain mortal will be the remedy for their inner emptiness, and when that person doesn't live up to expectations, they take out their anger and pain on them. Others are more far gone, and use mortals as nothing more than distractions from ennui, not as people, but as toys, objects that bring joy for a short while and then can be discarded when no longer pleasing. Toreador are predators in multiple senses of the word. They feed on mortals, bask in their liveliness, play with them, want to possess them. Their discipline of presence makes most mortals pretty much powerless when a Toreador wants to be adored by them. Clan Toreador lends itself to stories exploring the tension and inner confusion resulting from both treating mortals as a romanticized ideal of what you lost and as props for feeling what you lost once again. They are about having the power to easily manipulate and use people for your pleasure, and giving in to the temptation, or about resisting it, while society and conditions of your existence encourage giving in. Passion. Toreador are a passionate and intense clan, but their passion is different to the fiery nature of the Brujah. For the most part, they are the most blasé of kindred. Not much excites or moves them. Most things are too banal to care about. But when something moves them, it suddenly becomes the most important thing. Toreador passion is closely linked to desire, love, or offense. What a Toreador desires, a Toreador needs to have. A Toreador in love loves intensely and won't listen to reason. They strive for what they want with a burning passion and burning fear of losing what they wish to possess. If they can't have it, their pain, anger, and jealousy are intense and dangerous. They hold grudges and respond to slights with similar passion. A single badly thought out comment or action can make a Toreador into one's enemy. There is a certain pettiness to Toreador passion. Don't be afraid to lean into it when playing characters of that clan. Of course, you don't want to overdo it and have your Toreador sulk over every little thing that doesn't go their way. Most things, even if they are important for many reasons, will not be that important. Think of what kind of things will really move your Toreador to passion. What will delight them more than anything else? What will hurt them? And when these things come up in the chronicle, make your character act on their desire or perceived offense in a way that's driven not by reason, but by passion. Of course, the fact that the reader feels so strongly doesn't mean that they show what they feel. Generally, they are expected to learn to maintain a certain poise, and the older a reader is, the better they will be at it. But poise doesn't mean that they don't show any of their feelings. They might, for example, turn clearly passive aggressive or cold when offended to manipulate the feelings of others. They might admit they really want something, but do it in a tone that makes it seem like they've already half forgotten about it. They might not show offense in any way until they strike against the offender. Think about what of their passionate feelings your character aims to show, how, to whom, and why. And how will they feel and what will they do when their passion gets the better of them and they fail to maintain their desired appearances? Appearances. Toreador are a subtle clan, favoring underhanded methods. Their true thoughts, emotions, and aspirations are usually hidden behind a carefully constructed facade. Toreador are rarely what they seem to be. They skillfully mix truth and lies to create the desired impression of themselves. Their interactions with each other and with other kindred are full of misdirection, hidden meanings, and careful manipulation. They are, if you will, a masquerade, and learning to present the desired mask to the world is a skill that Toreador are expected to master. Of course, that doesn't mean that Toreador are never genuine. While it is certainly possible for a character to cling to their facade so much that it becomes just what they are, for many Toreador their mask is just a tool. They decide how and when to apply it, and when to show their genuine self. Revealing their true thoughts and feelings can be an act of trust reserved for those closest to the Toreador. But it can also be a very purposeful act of manipulation. After all, the skill to manipulation isn't to simply lie, but to know how to apply both lies and truth to achieve what you desire. When creating a Toreador character, think what facade they strive to present to the world and why. How do they go about it? In what situations is it important to them? How good are they at it? And how do they feel when they fail to appear as they'd like? While many Toreador, especially older ones, are very skilled at both hiding behind their desired facades and seeing through those presented by others, it isn't the case for all Toreador. Younger neonates might struggle to hold their composure and to see through the appearances of others. They will fall for the elders' facades. They will be manipulated and deceived. They will attempt to join the complex social games of their clan and completely misunderstand what is going on. Don't be afraid to lean into that when appropriate. After all, characters who never are manipulated or misdirected by others aren't really very interesting. Clan Toreador is about having to navigate social interactions based on appearances, misdirection, and subterfuge. From the moment of embrace, Toreador are thrown into such an environment, and it is important to think about how your character feels about it. Do they enjoy playing their clan's games, gradually becoming better at them? Are they somewhat frustrated, but do their best to blend in and thrive? Or do they struggle with this kind of social interactions? Some characters will find it exhausting and hate it. Some just won't be able to keep up. Some will find it all repulsive and disturbing. Some simply won't care to try, focusing on their passion. There is certainly place for Toreador characters who aren't good at seeing through and creating appearances. But those characters aren't exempt from the social life of their clan, and they might find it much more difficult to fit in. Those who demonstrate other qualities that Toreador value, such as artistic skill and physical beauty, are likely to be forgiven their rudeness and eccentricity. Their crude honesty might even be construed as charming. However, those without other qualities valued by the Toreador will find themselves mocked and dismissed by their clan, which will likely make their existence difficult. After all, if you're not an artiste, you fail as a poseur, and you aren't even pleasing to the eye. What exactly is the point of view? Finally, while Toreador are extremely skilled at seeing through others, learning their secrets, and steering social situations, they generally don't want to be seen as such. They prefer to be underestimated and readily present themselves as buffoons, degenerates, and weak, fragile, pretty things. They are, of course, anything but it suits them not to be treated too seriously. They know how to use it to their advantage, and while many kindreds know better than to fall for this facade, it still gives Toreador a degree of plausible deniability. The flip side to such an image, of course, is that it is hindrance to the characters who want to exercise more direct power and influence. They will find it more difficult to be treated seriously on the account of being just empty headed, fickle Toreador. In Vampire the Dark Ages, Clanventure says of the Toreador, value their opinion on art and architecture, but not on anything else. The Toreador who wish to act more directly will come across this kind of attitude time and time again, while simultaneously facing condescension and ridicule from their own clan for their efforts. Exploring the struggle of such Toreador can certainly make for an interesting story. Just remember that while they might gain some respect and find a niche for themselves, they probably won't be as successful as they'd like to be, particularly if their clanmates choose to turn other kindred against them. Soft power. VTM is a game about power, and Clan Toreador is focused on exploring its one particular kind. Soft power is the kind of power that works not through coercion, but through attraction and appeal. It doesn't directly order, but indirectly influences, shaping preferences, opinions, and hopes of others. This is how Toreador operate. Instead of making direct demands, they subtly get other kindred to want what they want them to want, and to dislike whomever they want them to dislike. They accomplish their political and personal goals by acting through others, influencing their views and emotions. They make others act through making them care. The power Toreador wield is unobvious, perhaps even invisible to less perceptive kindred. Yet it can be very effective. Toreador are the ones who shape public opinion among kindred. Characters who make an enemy of an influential Toreador might soon find that other kindred distance themselves from them or treat them less seriously. On the other hand, a favor of a Toreador can open to the characters doors and possibilities they didn't even know existed. Clan Toreador lends itself to stories exploring the uses of soft power, its possibilities, its impact on people, and its limits. Many Toreador will quickly discover that using emotions of others is the easiest way for them to first of all survive, and then to start getting what they want. Auspex makes it easier to overhear people, get insight into their emotions and thoughts, understand what they're about, and what is the best way to interact with them. While not all Toreador would have been skilled observers and manipulators before their embrace, all will eventually find themselves in situations where they have to rely on what they have, and many of Toreador's gifts lend themselves to acting upon the world through soft power. While that kind of power might seem kinder than direct orders or physical violence, it can be just as cruel and just as destructive. Not all applications of soft power will necessarily cause harm, but some definitely will. Clan Toreador is about exploring how such harm is caused and what effects it has. This can be done through player characters manipulating others and having to face the harm they caused in the process to those they used and influenced. It can also be done through characters being influenced by a Toreador to do things they later regret, and having to live with the fact that they've done them not because someone forced them, but because they wanted to do them. Finally, while Toreador can be very effective at exerting indirect influence, not everything can be accomplished in this way. Some kindred just won't be swayed, or not to the extent a Toreador would want. People have their loyalties, principles, and deep enmities. Not everyone can be manipulated to do anything. Presence can be resisted, and some people won't take kindly to having it used on them. And of course, no amount of soft power will stop or sway a Sabbat pack that's out for blood. A Toreador can of course get others to care about them and protect them, but whom they can get to do what can be limited by other kindred's priorities, personalities, and goals. Sometimes charm and social influence just aren't enough. Clan Toreador brings soft power into VTM stories, but it is just one kind of power exercised in its setting. It isn't simply about being a skilled manipulator able to achieve whatever they want through influencing others. It is about exploring what soft power can and cannot do in various contexts. Part 3: Creating Toreador Characters. I will now give few examples of how you can incorporate these themes into Toreador characters. Remember that you don't have to include all of these themes into every character. I generally like to start with one or two in my basic concept, and then see what else fits. The first example is Lana, a character played by my friend in a chronicle that I ran. She was strongly tied to themes of beauty and art, being a beautiful person herself and loving beauty and art with the very core of her being. She dedicated herself to it, becoming an art gallery owner and seeking out unknown, promising artists to champion their work. Lana's regret was that despite this love, she was unable to create art herself. She lacked vision for it and found it difficult to learn related skills. Her relationship to art was characterized not just by love, but also by longing. She desired what she didn't have. This desire and lust for beauty were her weakness. When it came to beautiful people, fascinating art, or indication that she could learn to create, she abandoned rational thinking and was easily swayed, a fact that was used by a Sabbat Toreador who took interest in her. Lana was drawn to all art and beauty, classical, highly experimental, and outright disturbing. She endangered herself and others for it, and her desire for beauty often influenced her judgment of other kindred. Lana's story was also the one of passion. While in most circumstances she was a fairly level-headed person and a voice of reason, when it came to the few things and people she desired, she abandoned all sense and let herself be driven by passion. When she desired with overwhelming intensity, and when she was hurt, she consoled herself with pleasure, throwing herself into it, forgetting everything else. She had several lovers, and when one hurt her, she consoled herself with another. She impulsively and repeatedly cheated on her sire with a charming Tremere, but wanted her sire passionately and was hurt and offended by any neglect from his side. Even when her sire lied to her, hid things from her, and finally defected to the Sabbat, she kept wanting him and coming back to him. Her blood bond to her sire of course helped, but she usually didn't even try to fight it. Lana also romanced a dangerous Sabbat Toreador who murdered her, leading to her embrace. Several times she was horrified by herself, but she kept coming back to him. She knew he was playing with her and was an inhuman monster who could and did hurt her. But he was beautiful, enticing, and started teaching her art. She simply couldn't resist him. Lana was also a socially skilled toreador, touching upon themes of appearances and soft power, although they were less prominent. But she was the character who used her social skills to hide her true thoughts and feelings, and who readily joined the social games of her clan, initially enjoying being the center of attention. But the more she was used by others, and the more she realized the dark nature of some kindred, the more she regretted the attention she drew to herself. Her story was the one of falling for the apparent charm of Toreador society and slowly realizing her mistake. The second character example is Arkadiusz. He was an NPC I created as Lana's sire, but being a young neonate, he could also easily serve as a player character. Arkadiusz's main themes are art, ennui, and mortal world. He is an artist, a very skilled painter who finds solace in his art, using it to process and express emotions and to escape the emptiness and pain of existence. He was embraced as a young artist by a sire who became enamored with him and his potential. She was very possessive and kept him close, not quite in isolation from the other kindred, but definitely not allowing him to roam freely among them. During the first years after Arkadiusz's embrace, his sire and his art were his whole world. It was an isolated and intense existence. Arkadiusz greatly developed his artistic skill and style during this period, and he loved his sire through a mix of blood, presence, and lack of any other close connection with another person. This lasted until his sire was killed by the Sabbat, and Arkadiusz was suddenly left on his own. As the emotional intensity of past years disappeared, Arkadiusz started succumbing to ennui. He felt lost, everything felt empty. He poured a lot of himself and his emotions into his art. But he already started feeling ennui, not overwhelming one, but enough to make him long for another intense and close relationship. While he was socially skilled enough to put on appearances and maintain good, if a bit distant, relationship with other Toreador, they didn't satisfy him and felt too shallow. He longed for a deep connection that overshadows everything and everyone else. He also longed for the mortal world. Having been embraced as a young man, he felt he missed out on being a part of an artistic community, making connections with people, making mistakes, succeeding, leaving. For the sake of the masquerade, he preferred to keep himself somewhat removed from that world, but he observed it and missed being a part of it. It felt so different from the emptiness he felt inside him. In my chronicle, Arkadiusz became fascinated with Lana, a mortal who traced him through his art and wanted to help his career, and whom he ended up embracing to save her life. But as a player character, Arkadiusz could make all sorts of connections to mortal world. Keep observing it and longing for it, find a mortal lover, try to befriend mortal artists, all the time seeking the intense, close connection with somebody, trying to escape the emptiness he felt inside him. My third example, created for the purposes of this video, is Isabella, who ties into themes of beauty, chasing pleasure, and appearances. As a mortal, she was a young woman beginning career as a journalist. She was ambitious and wanted to make a name for herself. She was also incredibly beautiful, a fact that didn't matter much to her, but mattered a lot to her sire, a bored Ancilla who, moved by Isabella's beauty, decided to preserve it through embracing her and to possess it. Isabella became a distraction from Ennui, lover and toy to her sire. The twisted thing was that although she sometimes felt used, she also enjoyed being with her lover. She loved him because of blood bond and presence, and although she sometimes hated herself for it, she desired him and his attention. Intense and extreme sensations became a way for her to forget everything: her situation, her hurt, herself. She missed him and, rejected, tried to both make him jealous and forget her pain for taking other lovers, seeking more extreme sensations, trying to lose herself in pleasure, not to think about her existence. Pleasure became her escape from loneliness and hurt, from having to think about how she was used and abused, and from difficulties she now faced in the kindred society. Isabella was observant and intelligent, something that could easily be overlooked by a less perceptive kindred. On some level, she wanted to reassert herself and to regain some respect that she desperately needed after what she's been through. She realized that she could use her hedonist image and her beauty to accomplish some of her goals. But she felt revulsion at the very thought of using that. She wanted to be treated seriously and not to be objectified, so she hesitated to use what could bring her easier success. But despite this aspiration, she still longed to lose herself in pleasure and to forget everything she's been through. If I was to play Isabella, I'd lean into this contradiction between wanting to reassert herself and to lose herself. Depending on the events in the chronicle, her story could be about struggling against her image as nothing more than horny broken Toreador. It could also be a story of leaning into that image out of necessity or practical considerations, despite her discomfort with cultivating such appearances. Or it could be a story about her losing herself more and more in pleasure and gradually succumbing to ennui as her desire to reassert herself becomes less and less important. For the purposes of this video, I also created Cillian, a new Sabbat character, to give an example of how Toreador themes can be integrated into characters of that sect. His main themes are ennui and art. In life, he was not remarkable in any way that could attract Toreador's attention. He was not an artist, wasn't particularly pretty, and didn't care much about beauty. He was a random victim of a Sabbat mass embrace, and having survived it, he endured all the horrors of being a Sabbat shovelhead. Cillian struggled with the trauma of both being subjected to violence and inflicting it on others, and as time went on, he became more and more indifferent to everything. Hurting others didn't matter anymore, but nothing else seemed to matter. Cillian was succumbing to ennui, brought on quickly by all he's been through. He was sliding into it fast, not caring about anything anymore. The change came when, considerable time after his embrace, having randomly come across a video of glass blowing, he experienced rapture for the first time. The beauty that he witnessed awakened something new in him. It saved him from the brink of wassail. It gave him a reason to go on. He couldn't stop thinking about it. In an instant, whole meaning of his existence manifested in the art he witnessed. Cillian began learning glassblowing, finding double meaning in his art. His trauma paled in comparison with the delight he felt when faced with beauty. It was soothing and made him feel not just alive, but more fulfilled than ever before. Learning to create such beauty became his most important goal. At the same time, the risk and courage involved in pursuing this art as a kindred brought him closer to the Sabbat. He started to take pleasure in testing himself, getting close to fire and high temperatures, becoming more accustomed to it than some of his packmates. Through his obsession, he grew strong and terrifying. He finally got respect of his pack. He was thriving. Of course, the ennui wasn't healed forever. As time went on, Cillian's art became more extreme, as what delighted him previously no longer satisfied him. He needed to go further to continue to feel alive. He fire danced with melting glass. He turned his materials into instruments for inflicting pain on captured Camarilla canites. He made sculptures out of glass and burned bodies. He delighted his pack with cruel and monstrous art. The beauty continued to soothe him, but what he found beautiful became increasingly more dangerous and darker. For Cillian, beauty and art were the salvation and the one source of meaning, but they didn't bring him closer to his humanity. On the contrary, they led him to finally feeling at home in the Sabbat. They soothed his trauma so that he could finally become a monster. Finally, I want to give an example of an elder character. I will use Mikhail Orlov, the Toreador primogen that I created for my two chronicles set in Warsaw. In life, Mikhail was a Russian nobleman, an intelligent, perceptive, and handsome man with skill for political maneuvers and an eye for art. While he was trained in music, he would never consider himself an artist, but merely a connoisseur of the arts and a patron to many artists. He read a lot and experimented with radical ideas, more out of desire to stir things up than out of any real progressive leanings. He took many lovers and surrounded himself with beauty and friends, exerting influence through his various contacts. He adjusted reasonably well to kindred society, gaining favor of his sire with his sharp mind and wit. He fitted into the role of a poseur, but Toreador Vita strengthened his passion for art. What was before just one of his interests became a lifeline in darker times. He knew he couldn't create, but admiring art brought him solace and wonder amid the tensions of the kindred existence. A calculating man by nature, he obviously showed his eye for art to win at least some appreciation and protection from his clan, but the intense love he felt for art was absolutely real. Few centuries later, Mikhail is the Toreador primogen. He is a character primarily and heavily leaning into themes of appearances and soft power. He presents himself as a fickle, petty buffoon. He can be charming when he wants to, and is absolutely obnoxious to those he wants to disrespect. He deliberately acts in a way that is likely to make others not take him seriously. But it is, of course, all a pose. Mikhail is deeply involved in political games that go on in the Warsaw Camarilla. He carefully observes what goes on around him and pulls social strings to influence how other kindred are perceived. He doesn't wish to be the prince himself, seeing the position as better left to those who can be made to shoulder associated risks. He isn't and never has been interested in holding any hard power. He does, however, have views on who should and who shouldn't have influence in the city, and acts to strengthen the former and undermine the latter. He acts through casually reminding kindred of cruelty of his rival, giving obnoxious speeches that nevertheless touch on something true, and for spreading gossip. He understands people well and deliberately stirs things up to push them in his desired direction. He often acts like a fool, but is in fact a dangerous, calculating man. Mikhail is dangerous, not only as a politician, but also as a person. His time as a kindred left him cold and bored, full of ennui and indifference. He can be casually cruel and abuses people for his amusement and pleasure. He was an abusive lover to his child, whom he met as an innocent young nun, embraced her for her incredible beauty, and left her broken and twisted when he grew bored, but would still casually from time to time remind her that she was his. Mikhail is now far removed from his former humanity, but his love for art is still true. Beautiful works still touch his soul, reminding him of good and wonder. They soothe his bored, cold heart. Witnessing beauty of art doesn't make him a better man, but it stirs in him a memory of something better, certain regret, certain kinder emotions. As such, despite being a calculating and abusive man, he genuinely protects and supports kindred who impress him with artistic talent. He forgives them more and will speak out on their behalf. One of his greatest regrets is that his child eventually mostly stopped painting after what he put her through. He is an inhuman, cruel, calculating elder, but truly beautiful art can still move him and make him feel regret. I hope this video gave you some inspiration for Toreador characters. I definitely will be making more of these videos in the future, but they take quite a lot of time to make, so stay tuned. And in the meantime, make some Toreador and play some VTM.